Do we have a fantasy star on our hands here, George? Here is the question with Jaden Daniels of the Washington Commanders. A lot of folks went into the fantasy season saying, hey, look, maybe this isn't Anthony Richardson, but it could be the next best thing. I'm here to tell you, I don't know. I'm sort of feeling like Daniels could be better than Anthony Richardson.
I don't know if I'm going to go there yet, all right, but I think he's in the conversation, yeah. What did we hear at draft time? A lot of people wanted a quarterback who could move, right? You don't want the guy who's going to take 5-7 steps and throw the football anymore because you want that additional rushing yards. You know, you get 50, 60 yards, that's a touchdown, right? That's why Josh Allen is so valuable. Lamar Jackson is so valuable, right? You go up and down. Jalen Hurts. You go up and down here. I think Daniels is going to be a good quarterback. I think Washington got their guy, and he can throw the football too. We know McLaurin's a really good wide receiver. It may not be much else there. We'll see what McCaffrey can be. Luke McCaffrey can be there in time. But you know, I do have hope for him. I think at season's end he's going to be a quarterback one. It may be a low end quarterback one, but a quarterback one nonetheless.
Yeah, I was really impressed watching him in that game. All right, now Anthony Richardson, look, he's going to have a big year. He's going to have a big fantasy year. There's no question about it. I don't know about the long-term viability here. And look, give him credit. He hung in there with the Houston Texans. My fear for him, George, is that when you go back and you watch film, if you protect the deep ball against Richardson, he could hurt you with his legs. And that may be where all of his fantasy value is coming from. I cannot see him throwing 2 70-yard bombs like he did again.
That should come in time, right? Practice time. I think he will get better here. I think Richardson's going to be fine. Does need to learn how to avoid hits. All right. Once again, remember that hit from Tua last night? He initiated it. Slide. The rules are made for you not to get hit. Take advantage of them.
Welcome to an all-new episode of Bare Knuckle Fighting Main Event here on SportsGrid. I'm Brian Ciano. Thank you so much for joining us as we take our weekly look at everything going on in the world of the Bare Knuckle Fighting Championships. And we got a little bit of a break here as far as fight cards go, but we are going to get back into action quickly in a couple weeks in a big way. The first ever fight card on DAZN, first fight in Spain ever for the BKFC. We're going to talk about all that a little bit in just a couple minutes here on this show. Also going to talk a little bit about what we got coming up in Denver after that. But first, let me tell you what we have going on as far as guests on the show today. Coming up in the next segment, we're going to do a double shot with cruiserweight Stephen Tomahawk Townsend, of course, coming off that big win over Jeremy Smith, a absolute clinic. He put on one of the top guys in that division. We'll talk to him about that fight, how he's feeling afterwards, and what is coming up next for him. What does he see in his future? What guys are on his hit list? And we'll see what he thinks can happen in this division, obviously with this title up for grabs, as we mentioned, in a couple weeks at the end of October. Then we will talk to our man, Chris Lights Out Lytle, the color analyst for the BKFC. We're going to talk to him a little bit about two things. First, these fights we have coming up in Spain. Obviously, we got to get his pick his brain on those before we possibly lose him to tryouts and going over to Europe to call those fights. So let's find out what he thinks about those fights before we get any closer to them. And also, I know he has some tryouts coming up, and I want to see what he looks for. What are the things that happen when he goes to these tryouts? Because we've talked to him about doing them, and he's obviously talked glowingly about some of the fighters that come out of him. So what goes into doing a tryout? What does he look for? How do we find these fighters that end up joining the BKFC? We'll talk to Chris Lights Out Lytle about that coming up a little later in the show, and then we'll also talk, before we get out of here, to welterweight Cameron Jumpman Van Camp, who's going to be fighting on that October card, that October 25th card out in Denver, the Kamosi DP title fight. He will be one of the featured attractions on that fight card as well, fighting Brandon Gertz. Going to be a great fight. We'll maybe touch on that a little bit before we get out of here and over to Tomahawk Townsend in the next segment. But why don't we get right into it? Let's talk about these fights coming up. First up is going to be in Spain, October 12th. We've been waiting for this one for a while. It was announced a couple months ago. Obviously, we had the press conference over there where we had a bunch of the fighters involved, including Tony Loco Soto and Franco Tenaglia, who had their war of words back and forth. Definitely some not safe for work kind of content that you can go see on the BKFC's social medias from back then. If you go find it, Conor McGregor was there where we first heard from him, and his getting involved with the BKFC, why, what he thinks the future holds for the organization, his role, all that kind of stuff. all that went on. Still, there was a couple weeks, probably maybe even a couple months from now and from these fights. So we've been anxiously waiting. And as we have been waiting, more and more has been added on to this card. You also had No Doubt Trout defending his title on that card. You also have Dave Mundell just recently added to go over there and defend his title. Why don't we break down those top fights, look at what's going on, and maybe even mention some of the other fighters that we're excited to see before we jump ahead a little more and talk about Denver. As we said, it's going to be the first fight on DAZN as part of that deal that was just announced last week during the Hollywood, Florida fights. DAZN is going to be a big broadcast partner for the BKFC, and this is going to be the thing that kicks it off. So it's going to be very interesting to see. Do things change? It's the production. Does the way things are shown? Does any of this stuff involved with the fights themselves that we've seen on the BKFC app change now that you have a partner like DAZN and the big time broadcast they've put on in combat sports? That is going to be our first look at that. But let's talk about some of the fights now. Of course, lightweight title, as we said, Franco Tenaglia, Tony Loco Soto. These guys talking trash back and forth when they met each other over in Spain before. Tenaglia coming off the win, getting the UK title against James Lights Out Lilly. Tenaglia is 3-0, the Argentina fighter who now makes his home in Spain for a while, is now trying to get the main BKFC title, the lightweight title that no one holds because Tony Loco Soto never got that chance. We've been calling for that for a while. He's 6-0 in the BKFC when he went 4-0, 5-0, 6-0. We're like, when's this guy getting his shot? And it was always held by Palomino, and he never got that title shot. Well, now that title is vacated, and now he gets his shot against Tenaglia. It's going to be very interesting, these two guys going against each other. Of course, Soto coming off the Croom win last October. Before that, he beat Tyler Goodjohn, a guy people had as the heir apparent for 155 title. That Palomino was going to give it up, go just stick at 165, defend that belt, and let Tyler Goodjohn take over the lightweight title. Never happened because of guys like Tony Loco Soto who got in his way. Now, does he get that title that he's been seeking for so long? It's been a big change in his life. He's focused now. He's quit his day job, no longer a corrections officer, and now just training full-time fighter, opened up his own gym as well. So, does that extra focus get him to the level he needs? Because he's shown how great he is, but Tenaglia also has shown that this guy is dangerous. When we saw him put Lights Out Lilly onto the mat a couple times in that fight in the UK, I don't think anybody really expected what came out of that fight, the way that Tenaglia was able to do whatever he wanted. I mean, Lights Out Lilly had a good fight. You can't take it away from him. It wasn't like he had a bad night and, it was just easy for Tenaglia. He had to work for it against a top-level fighter and still looked absolutely amazing. So it's going to be a tough fight. You got a lot of power in Tenaglia. Can Soto avoid getting put to the mat and, end up getting the win later on? Or is it a situation where Tenaglia just puts it on him, comes out aggressive, and puts him to, on his back and takes the title by finish? We will see. It's going to be an awesome fight. Also, welterweight title, No Doubt Trout versus Rico Franco. Now, Trout took that title, the welterweight title, off of the previously mentioned Luis Palomino, the former boxing champion, coming in now, taking the gloves off. This will be the third time he fights for the BKFC. The first time he actually defends this title since he just beat Palomino in February. Beat Diego Sanchez in his first fight for the BKFC. Has a lot of experience, a lot of fights, but a lot of that came with gloves on. This is a different animal. Honestly, I didn't think he was going to have it against Palomino because it can be a different beast fighting this style, this way, without the gloves, without being able to block as much, without being able to do the things you can do and get away with the clutching and the grabbing to, stop a person's offense in regular boxing as you can in the BKFC where you have to fight through it. He did a great job, though. He got the title in Palomino's own backyard. So now he defends it for the first time against Rico Franco, a guy who was undefeated in the BKFC over in the UK, coming off his last win over Franco Harris in Newcastle last June. So he's had some time off here and now getting a shot at the title against No Doubt Trout, a very dangerous guy. And that fight against Franco Harris, he just kept dropping the guy left and right. Caleb Harris, sorry, not Franco Harris, not the former football player, against Caleb Lionheart Harris, kept putting him to the mat over and over again. I'm surprised that Harris was even able to survive like he did, but still, Rico Franco was able to beat him, and now will take his shot against No Doubt Trout and see if he can put that power to use against a great boxing champion who wants to avoid the big shots and try to outpoint you, outstrike you, and get out of the way. Then the one that was a kind of a surprise, the wild card that came out of nowhere, Dave Mundell defending his middleweight title against Danny Christie. Mundell was supposed to fight King Mo in Hollywood, Florida. That fight fell apart, and all of a sudden this one came together when he dropped back down to his natural middleweight fight weight here where he is the champion, coming off his win over Doug Coltrane last November. He's been itching for a fight, trying to get Mike Perry involved. Never happened. Finally gets another shot at somebody here with his 8-1 BKFC record, and that is Danny Christie, who's 5-1 the BKFC. Of course, it's done a lot of that, or all of that, over in the UK, but did fight Mundell's teammate Jared Warren when he was back up there at light heavyweight, because that was where Christie was the title holder for the UK. Lost to Jared Warren after being undefeated before that. Came back, fought another one to defend his UK title because that title was not up for grab when he lost to Warren, and then said, you know what? I'm too small for this. I got to go back down. I want to go to my more natural weight, and that was middleweight, where he got his first victory in his last fight against Jimmy Millar in June. Now, thinking he has that championship pedigree at this weight class, going up against one of the best in the BKFC, one of the pound-for-pound best, and Dave Redneck Mundell. This is going to be an awesome fight. Both these guys have power. Both these guys have skill and can outbox their opponents. It's going to be interesting to see which style they employ against each other and who gets the better of the two. You also have other fights that have a lot of importance, like James Lights Out Lilly, who was 3-0, now coming off of back-to-back losses to Palomino and Tenaglia. This is a big one for him to bounce back. Can he do that against Felipe da Silva Maia, who is 1-1 in the BKFC, the former BJJ ace? You also have Hannah Rankin making her debut, and others, Nick Chapman. So it's going to be an awesome card over in Spain. You know what? It's such a good card. We didn't even get to talk about Denver at all, which I wanted to tease a little bit. We'll have to maybe do that later in the show or hold that over to next week. We'll find all that out. But when we come back, we'll talk to our man, Stephen Tomahawk Townsend, after his great win over Jeremy Smith.
Do we have a fantasy star on our hands here, George? Here is the question with Jaden Daniels of the Washington Commanders. A lot of folks went into the fantasy season saying, hey, look, maybe this isn't Anthony Richardson, but it could be the next best thing. I'm here to tell you, I don't know. I'm sort of feeling like Daniels could be better than Anthony Richardson.
I don't know if I'm going to go there yet, all right, but I think he's in the conversation, yeah. What did we hear at draft time? A lot of people wanted a quarterback who can move, right? You don't want the guy who's going to take 5-7 steps and throw the football anymore, because you want that additional rushing yards. You get 50, 60 yards, that's a touchdown, right? That's why Josh Allen is so valuable. Lamar Jackson is so valuable, right? You go up and down. Jalen Hurts. You go up and down here. I think Daniels is going to be a good quarterback. I think Washington got their guy, and he can throw the football too. We know McLaurin's a really good wide receiver. It may not be much else there. We'll see what McCaffrey can be. Luke McCaffrey can be there in time. But I do have hope for him. I think at season's end he's going to be a quarterback one. It may be a low end quarterback one, but a quarterback one nonetheless.
Yeah, I was really impressed watching him in that game. All right, now Anthony Richardson, look, he's going to have a big year. He's going to have a big fantasy year. There's no question about it. I don't know about the long-term viability here. And look, give him credit. He hung in there with the Houston Texans. My fear for him, George, is that when you go back and you watch film, if you protect the deep ball against Richardson, he could hurt you with his legs. And that may be where all of his fantasy value is coming from. I cannot see him throwing 2 70-yard bombs like he did again.
That should come in time, right? Practice time. I think he will get better here. I think Richardson is going to be fine. Does need to learn how to avoid hits. All right. Once again, that hit. Remember that hit from Tua last night? He initiated it. Slide. The rules are made for you not to get hit. Take advantage of them.
Welcome back into Bare Knuckle Fighting main event here on SportsGrid. And, while we have a couple weeks in between fights here, we got to keep looking back and looking forward, back and forth on, looking at some of the great fights we've had over these last few weeks, because there were so many on these last few cards. And then, of course, previewing what we got coming up. And one of those guys that you got to talk to if you're going to talk about what we've just seen recently for the BKFC is Stephen Tomahawk Townsend, who just had a huge fight down in Hollywood, Florida. A great performance, dominating performance, gets the 4th round doctor stoppage against Jeremy Smith. Steve, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your time. I know going into the fight, You had some time off because you had hand injuries that you had to heal, and then I saw some of the interviews you did afterwards. You got a little banged up again. It seemed like. How are the hands? What was the recovery like, and the rehab going into that fight? And how are you feeling now after it?
Going into that fight, I'm coming off of double surgeries on both hands from the last fight back in February. But through doing lots of recovery, lots of therapy and things like that, my hands were actually in really good shape. Coming into this fight, they're probably the best they've been in the past year. I've had a couple hand injuries. As of right now, they're better than I thought they were, so that's amazing. That means I'm really quick to be back in action. I'm already starting to train. No big fractures and breaks in the actual metacarpals, just a couple little finger issues, but that heals a lot faster. So there's no surgery, and it looks like we're back on track for what's next.
Happy to hear. I was a little worried when I saw some of the interviews that you might be out for a long while after you just had that great performance, but happy to hear that you are recovering already and get back into training, get ready to go, because after you put a performance on like that, the last thing you want to do is be sitting out waiting and healing. But coming into that fight, as you said, you had the double hit injuries, surgeries. As a fighter, what's that like going into a fight after coming off of that? I know this is your profession. You're used to doing this. Like you said, you've had injuries before, but is there any thing in the back of your head when you're coming out of training and now you're going to the fight, taking gloves off and hitting the guy again, worried about breaking it again or having these other injuries, or would you just throw that out the window because otherwise you're going to be too passive and not do what you want to do?
So this kind of goes back all the way to last July. I broke my hand in the Weinmiller fight as well. So I came off of surgeries from that one, which I had a double surgery back then. And then I just had the surgery from February. So this last fight, I couldn't finish the fight with Leo Brasier because of my hands. And taking a loss like that, knowing that my hands, that was my reason for basically losing the fight. We put a lot of time into the recovery and the therapy. I always tell myself I don't want to pity pat. Like I don't ever want to feel like I can't punch with my, my hands. So I'm always going to do that. I'm not babying them. I want to be able to use them when it's time. But it going into this one here, I had such a bad taste in my mouth from losing the last fight with my hands. I wasn't going to let this one happen. I told myself, man, they'd be bloody stumps before we stop this fight. And I just used my timing a little bit better. Timing and actual precision saved my hands a lot of damage.
Well, you certainly had precision. You were able to get that timing because Jeremy Smith came in there. He's a tough guy. He's got power. Of course, you always got to worry about that when you face a tough guy like that. It's hard to put him down. But came in here with a very weird style. It seemed like just had that guard up. It almost seemed like it was hard for him to even know where you were to punch you because he just had that high guard at all times. Did that throw you off at all coming in there in the beginning? While you were kind of figuring yourself out, or is it just keeping yourself patient, waiting to find your openings, and then start picking them apart?
Man, first of all, Jeremy is a super tough dude, man. He hits hard. He's very persistent. I knew coming into this fight that I didn't want to have that fight because I'm thinking, hey, man, it's my hands. Why do we have to sit in here in this pocket and do this? I could work my angles, pick them apart. And I knew that he tucks in low. And he's always been like that. If you look at all his fights, and he's really protective of his face when he throws his overhands and stuff. But from that angle coming up, he's going to drop his guard, put his face down, and that's why the weird jab, the angle up jabs, and a couple of the uppercuts were touching home. Just difference in training. We knew how to train, prepare for him, and it all came together. A lot of the guys that I were sparring were a little bit lighter than me, so they moved a lot faster. So I'm used to moving around with these super fast guys, being able to hit them. So by the time I fought Jeremy, I was the faster guy, and it just kind of worked out the way we needed it to.
You certainly were. Even obviously he was a little slower because of that high guard, but it seemed like every time he swung, did he even catch you on many of those shots throughout 4 rounds? Because it looked like every time he swung, you were out of there. I don't know if there was a different fitness level that you felt after this fight, because you looked lighter on your feet, you looked even quicker. I mean, you've always been fast, you've always been powerful, but it looked like you were on a different level. It was just that he was moving that much slower.
It was just like I said, a lot of the guys they're high pro athletes that are good fighters that move very fast. When you're training with some of the best guys, you know what I mean? It brings the best out of you. So if that guy that you're fighting ain't better than you, it's just going to show up at the end of the day. And that's not taking anything away from Jeremy. It just goes to show how hard I train with the quality of sparring partners that I train. And I did get hit a few times. But once again, I feel like I've just really put in the sparring work, the movement work, and I was ready for everything that came that day, absolutely everything. So it worked out for me. All the training, all the stuff that me and Coach Byron put into this camp really paid off in the end, and I can't wait to see what we do next.
Yeah, I was seeing the videos right there that your coach put up on social media, where, showing how exactly you guys planned out for exactly what you did in the fight, knowing what he was going to do, knowing how he was going to come at you, and it just worked to perfection. What's going through your mind when you're in a fight like that? Obviously, you still got to respect him and his power, but when you're just picking him apart, everything, the plan's going to perfection. It's not a situation where you go in and say, okay, I'm going to do this, and all of a sudden it's not working. Like, everything's working fine. Are you laughing to yourself as you go to the corner? Like, this is exactly what I thought was going to happen.
It is exactly what I wanted to happen. It's not necessarily what I thought was going to happen. But I was just one step ahead. Everything was working out really good for me. And just once again, I'm grateful for the training that we put into this camp. That's like we prepared for everything that could have happened, and it turned out in our favor, and it showed.
Well, you certainly were ready. It was a picture-perfect fight. It was a clinic that you put on there. A great performance. We can take a quick break. When we come back, talking to Tomahawk Towns, we'll see what he has in mind next after this fight as he gets ready to go back into the BKFC squared circle as soon as possible.
Do we have a fantasy star on our hands here, George? Here is the question with Jaden Daniels of the Washington Commanders. A lot of folks went into the fantasy season saying, hey, look, maybe this isn't Anthony Richardson, but it could be the next best thing. I'm here to tell you, I don't know. I'm sort of feeling like Daniels could be better than Anthony Richardson.
I don't know if I'm going to go there yet, all right? But I think he's in the conversation, yeah. What did we hear at draft time? A lot of people wanted a quarterback who could move, right? You don't want the guy who's going to take 5-7 steps and throw the football anymore because you want that additional rushing yards. You get 50, 60 yards, that's a touchdown, right? That's why Josh Allen is so valuable. Lamar Jackson is so valuable, right? You go up and down. Jalen Hurts. You go up and down here. I think Daniels is going to be a good quarterback. I think Washington got their guy, and he can throw the football too. We know McLaurin's a really good wide receiver. It may not be much else there. We'll see what McCaffrey can be. Luke McCaffrey can be there in time. But I do have hope for him. I think at season's end he's going to be a quarterback one. It may be a low end quarterback one, but a quarterback one nonetheless.
Yeah, I was really impressed watching him in that game. All right, now Anthony Richardson, look, he's going to have a big year. He's going to have a big fantasy year. There's no question about it. I don't know about the long-term viability here. And look, give him credit. He hung in there with the Houston Texans. My fear for him, George, is that when you go back and you watch film, if you protect the deep ball against Richardson, he could hurt you with his legs. And that may be where all of his fantasy value is coming from. I cannot see him throwing 2 70-yard bombs like he did again.
That should come in time, right? Practice time. I think he will get better here. I think Richardson is going to be fine. Does need to learn how to avoid hits. All right. Once again, that hit. Remember that hit from Tua last night? He initiated it. Slide. The rules are made for you not to get hit. Take advantage of them.
Welcome back into Bare Knuckle Fighting main event here on Sports. We continue to talk to Stephen Tomahawk Townsend after his great win over Jeremy Smith back in Hollywood, Florida a couple weeks ago. An awesome performance. Just did what he wanted to do, picking apart his opponent, throwing those uppercuts, throwing those hooks, getting around that guard, and putting a pacing on him before the doctor finally stepped in. Stephen, let's continue to talk about, obviously we talked about the fight and how great it was. What's what do you see coming next for you? What do you want next? Because obviously this was a guy who was highly ranked. His record wasn't the greatest, but still was up there in those cruiserweight rankings. Has dropped down a little bit after the loss, but still, you know, they have been at number 5. Still, somehow you're not in there. After you beat the guy like that, shouldn't you get propelled up into that spot? Shouldn't you get that respect? Do you feel like they're not giving you enough love after that win?
I'm not even going to say that. I'm going to say that watch what I do next, and I better be in the top 5. You know what I mean? If I ain't there now, I should be. The next fight's going to put me right off in the mix where I need to be, which hopefully I've already put his name out there. Houston Alexander would be ideal. He's the number 1 guy. You guys threw the number 2 guy at me. I ate him up, handled business. Now I'm going to go up top and I'm going to handle him and take care of business, you know. A super respectful dude. I've been watching him longer than I've been fighting. So it's going to be a super dope thing to go and do. But I think he's the answer. I think he's what's next. That'd be great for me. I think it'd be great for him stylistically. We both fight. That'd be ideal. But there's also a guy that doesn't get talked about right now that I think he still should be, and that's, Lorenzo Hunt. He's kind of MIA at the moment, but he's still the big dog. You know, he didn't lose his title. He didn't lose to nobody. He's out the mix right now, and Kamosi and DP are getting ready to fight for that next month. So that's going to put a little bit of time span anyway. So I'd like to fight Houston, and if Lorenzo gets back in time, man, I'm ready to run it with him as well.
Yeah, we'll see when Lorenzo gets back in action after that unfortunately tested incident that got him suspended, and probably he's going to have meta action for a while. But you mentioned Houston Alexander. I mean, that's tough, dude. Obviously, a guy I like you have been watching for a long time. We've had him on the show a bunch of times. Can't have that much longer to fight, but he also hasn't fought in a year and a half. So who knows what's going on with him with all the things we have going out in his life. Otherwise, he has all his endeavors that he has going on. A lot of stuff going on, and like you said, when you look at those rankings, you got those 2 guys that are up there, Kamosi and DP, fighting for that title that was given up by Hunt. You mentioned Houston Alexander. You beat Jeremy Smith. There's not much else out there as way of a challenge for you. But still, you talked about before this fight that you're hungrier than ever. What's gotten the fire burning in you? Is it just the desire to make a name for yourself, to get that belt? What is the change that's got you even more motivated than you've been before with the BKFC?
So like this past year, it's a tough walk for me, and getting myself back together, getting situated, getting out of my head, getting back on track really worked out for me. It helped me push for actually to make sure. Sometimes you got to be checked to make sure you actually want to do something in life. Sometimes it ain't always for you. And each and every time I go through some obstacle, it's made me hungrier. So when I broke my hands, it was just like, all right, we got to get up after it. Prove everybody that they're wrong. And show the love to the ones that are really supporting you and show that you're right. So it's legacy, man. I'm not ready to say that I'm done. I'm ready to push hard. I know that I do this for me, So when you do something for yourself, it's more important. It's personal. So that's what it is. And I'm going to keep riding the bus until, the ride's over.
You got it. I mean, I'm sure people just in regular jobs sometimes have that gut check of, do I really want to be doing this? It's going to be a lot more of a gut check when you do what you do for a living and how tough and all the work that you have to put in, the injuries you have to go through. What do you think of that Kamosi DP fight for the cruiserweight title? Who do you expect to win that title coming up in Denver in a couple weeks?
This is a crazy one. I think both these dudes are awesome, really great fighters. I don't really know Chris. I've only had the opportunity of watching him fight. I know DP personally, kind of been coming up through the past couple of years together in the rankings. And he's the underdog, but I'd keep an eye on him, man. Kamosi's got to stay super sharp, super disciplined in order to win the fight.
And he has to fight a lot better than he did against Hunt for that title the first time. So we'll see how that one goes. Excited to watch it. But you'll be watching there with us. Stephen Talmach Tonsel, thanks so much for joining us. Can't wait to see you get back in the squared circle after that great performance against Jeremy Smith. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me, guys.
Do we have a fantasy star on our hands here, George? Here is the question with Jaden Daniels of the Washington Commanders. A lot of folks went into the fantasy season saying, hey, look, maybe this isn't Anthony Richardson, but it could be the next best thing. I'm here to tell you, I don't know. I'm sort of feeling like Daniels could be better than Anthony Richardson.
I don't know if I'm going to go there yet, all right, but I think he's in the conversation, yeah. What did we hear at draft time? A lot of people wanted a quarterback who could move, right? You don't want the guy who's going to take 5-7 steps and throw the football anymore because you want that additional rushing yards. You know, you get 50, 60 yards, that's a touchdown, right? That's why Josh Allen is so valuable. Lamar Jackson is so valuable, right? You go up and down. Jalen Hurts. You go up and down here. I think Daniels is going to be a good quarterback. I think Washington got their guy, and he can throw the football too. We know McLaurin's a really good wide receiver. It may not be much else there. We'll see what McCaffrey can be. Luke McCaffrey can be there in time. But, you know, I do have hope for him. I think at season's end, he's going to be a quarterback one. It may be a low-end quarterback one, but a quarterback one nonetheless.
Yeah, I was really impressed watching him in that game. All right, now Anthony Richardson, look, he's going to have a big year. He's going to have a big fantasy year. There's no question about it. I don't know about the long-term viability here. And look, give him credit. He hung in there with the Houston Texans. My fear for him, George, is that when you go back and you watch film, if you protect the deep ball against Richardson, he could hurt you with his legs. And that may be where all of his fantasy value is coming from. I cannot see him throwing 2 70-yard bombs like he did again.
That should come in time, right? Practice time. I think he will get better here. I think Richardson's going to be fine. Does need to learn how to avoid hits. All right. Once again, that hit. Remember that hit from Tua last night? He initiated it. Slide. The rules are made for you not to get hit. Take advantage of them.
Welcome back into Bare Knuckle Fighting main event here on SportsGrid. Let's continue to look ahead at what we got coming up down the pike here a little bit because got a couple weeks off of fights. But, you know, as we talked to Chris Lights Out Lytle last week, he does not have all this time off. We got some other things going on. Chris, I know you said last week when you talked to us that you have some tryouts coming up in the next couple weeks before you got to head over to Spain. Where are those ones going to be held? And, you know, what's looking for the future here with some of these prospects? I know you've been doing a lot of these. How have you liked doing them? And where are we going to be seeing the next ones?
Salt Lake City, October 5th. We're ready to come out there, put on a show. We're putting a lot of shows out there, so we got to get some new fighters out in the West. So I put on a lot of tryouts. We've been putting on a few in that area, a few fights. And, man, I just want to get more of the local talent, just anybody who's around the area. We were doing a ton of tryouts, and I started figuring out, man, we're putting all these tryouts, getting all these fighters. I don't have room for all of them. We don't have room to put all these guys on cards, so we're kind of scaling back a little bit. We want to do fewer tryouts, but use more of the people from the tryouts. So that's kind of our goal. We want these to be big. It's at something called FightCon. I wasn't familiar with it. So if you want to look it up, fightconexpo.com. They're having a UFC that night. I know there's a seminar earlier that day, like right before our tryouts with Royce Gracie. So it's a big deal going to FightCon. And if you come to the tryouts, you'll be able to enjoy all that type of just different fight-related stuff. So come on out there. It's going to be on the 5th. We're starting registration at 11. At noon, and it's going to start at 12:30.
There you go, knocking down the quantity of the tryouts, but not the quantity of how many fighters you're going to be using. Great to see. Of course, that should bring even more quality as, you know, less tryouts means more people showing up, you know, more the better fighters showing up at whatever it happens. So hopefully we get a lot of people there at Salt Lake. Sounds like a great event to have it at, a perfect, you know, situation with a lot of fighters and fight fans already being there. So why not have it there? Makes sense. And then, of course, you'll be heading out on the road after that. And, you know, why don't we, before we talk about you going over to Spain, you know, give people who may not have been to a tryout or may not have watched yet on the BKFC app some of these tryouts, you know, the behind-the-scene things. You know, what are some of the things that you are looking for when you go to these tryouts? What are some things you do with these fighters? And, you know, what's the qualities that really stand out to make somebody really sparkle in your eye as someone who could do damage and, you know, be a big-time addition to the BKFC?
You know, it's funny. We've done a lot of tryouts. A couple of the times we've done them, we weren't allowed to spar. So it's just, you know, a lot of bag work, hitting the mitts, shadow boxing. But to be honest with you, I like to see how people spar. I like whenever I'm doing these, I try to make sure we do that. And I'm not asking to go hard because we have a punch meter there. That's how hard I want to see you punch. I tell people do not spar harder than this. So I'm probably not going to use you because that tells me you don't know how to listen. And I want people who understand every aspect of fighting. If you're a high-level fighter, you shouldn't be out there hitting people as hard as you can and hurting people. That's not how you train and fight. So I want people coming in, showing what they got. But a lot of what I'm really looking for is their story. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing bare knuckle? I want to understand what's in your psyche that makes you do this because – like I said, 99% of the world thinks any kind of fighting is crazy, and 99% of the fight world thinks bare knuckles crazy. So I'm looking for that 1% of the 1%. I want to know what makes you want to do this and what makes you stand out.
Looking for the crazy, other crazies, but not too insane. Got to find that right balance, I'm sure, which, very fine line to be walking when you're just opening the doors and saying, anybody come in and see if you can do this. But I'm sure it's a lot of fun for you to do. And, you can hear the joy in your voice when you talk about it, especially when we talk to you about some of these fighters that you have found through tryouts that make these cards and are, doing big things so far on these Prospect Series cards. Can't wait to see more of those, Chris. Keep up the good work there. But we have this card coming up in a couple weeks in Spain, and it is loaded from top to bottom. There were a couple fights. There was one title fight, then it became 2, now 3. And, these are 4 main BKFC titles. This isn't just like some of the UK fights where we have UK titles on the line. This isn't some European belt. These are BKFC belts. So let's start at the top. Franco Tanguy, versus Tony Soto. Now, Soto's been waiting for that title for a long time. We also on the show have been saying, this guy deserves a shot. It was 4-0, and then 5-0, and then 6-0. Finally getting a shot at that belt, not against the guy he wanted in Luis Palomino, but going on against Franco Tanguy, who's the current UK champ. What do you think about this fight? I mean, these are 2 violent guys. Both, have shown that they can be controlled. They can find their spots. But when push comes to shove, these guys are going to brawl.
Yeah, Soto's really impressed me with his ability to adapt and to fight different styles. I thought when he fought Kroom was that pressure style, getting inside the whole time, wearing people out. I thought he'd get worn out. And he did a good job of maintaining, landing little uppercuts and their little punches. He wore Kroom out, so that really impressed me because that shows me everybody can fight their style, but can you fight other styles? He was able to do that, so that really impressed me about him. So we'll see. That should be a great fight. That should be an amazing one. Franco, there just a heavy hitter, heavy hitting guy. You either have to think it's gonna either. The way I see it, I'm thinking either Soto gets knocked out in the first couple rounds or he wins late. I mean, I don't see him winning by early knockout, but you never know. But I mean, and I think he can just wear people down. So I think either he's going to win late or he's going to go out early.
It's surviving that early onslaught of Tanaglia is a big thing. That power, we saw that against James Lights Out Lilly, him putting him to the mat a couple times. So obviously a tough dude.
The way real quick, the way he knocked James Lilly's head back, I was really impressed with Lilly's ability to get up and finish that fight. I mean, his head went back. Lilly's tough as nails. He got up, and not only did he keep fighting, he did well as that fight went on. But, man, that power, I've never seen James Lilly's head get knocked back like that. That was impressive.
It was. And another guy who's always been impressive whenever he gets in there has been Austin Trout, both in the boxing world, now the bare knuckle world, taking that lightweight title off of, welterweight title, off Palomino in February. Now defends it for the first time against Rico Franco. Franco, making his run over the UK. We haven't seen much of him over in the US yet, but, he'll be fighting in Spain against Austin Trout, putting that title on the line. A lot of people expected that, the boxer walking into the BKFC didn't know what he was getting into when he fought a guy in Palomino, but he lived up to the hype. He lived up to the championship medal that he's shown before. What's he facing against Rico Franco for people who might not have seen him on the main U.S. cards?
I mean, Franco, he's been one of the best guys, for a long time we were saying one of the best guys who's not fighting in the BKFC. And now they have him in the BKFC, so he's legit. I think when he fought Caleb Harris, he showed everything. I mean, every time he hit Caleb, he hurt him. Knocked him out 5 times in one round, I think 9 times overall. And Caleb's a tough dude. He kept getting up, but, man, Rico's accurate. He's got a lot of experience, so he's a very, very good, very tough fighter. Trout doesn't have the experience in bare knuckle. Hey, he has a higher boxing pedigree, but will that matter against a guy who has a lot of bare knuckle experience? I wish I knew that's the fight that I'm really looking forward to the most, I think, so.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be a clash of styles. The power of Franco versus the boxing. Get your shots, don't get hit, get your points of Austin Trout. We'll see which one is able to come away with the win in that one. And then the third title on the line, the middleweight title, Dave Mundell. He's been looking for a fight for a long time. This poor guy, getting dodged by Mike Perry. I think since that Coltrane win. So now he says he was supposed to have the fight against King Mo. That fell apart. Where he's going to go up in weight. Now he drops back down to his normal weight class and goes over and fights Danny Christie, of course, was a champion of light heavyweight, lost to his teammate Jared Warren, and then decided, after another fight that he was going to drop in weight, had his first fight in this weight class, and very impressive win in the UK just before this. Now he gets a shot at the Redneck over in Spain.
And hey, I don't care what anybody says. I don't think Mundell's ever fought overseas. So going over for the first time, that's a different experience. You have to acclimate your body. You have to get used to that. If you're not there ready, if you don't get there a little bit in early to prepare, your body might not be ready. We haven't seen what Mundell could do if he's dealing with some adversity in that way. So that's an interesting fight. Chris is going to have a little bit of the home field advantage.
Should be an awesome card. Can't wait to see it. Going to be this first fight on DAZN. We also have Lights Out Lily on there. You have a couple of fighters, big names making their debut, include Hannah Ranking from, over the pond, big boxing fighters. So we're going to have a loaded card in a bull ring in Spain. Doesn't get better than that. And Chris Lights Out Loud will be calling all that action. Chris, thanks so much for joining us. Hopefully we'll talk to you again soon, my man.
I can't wait for Spain, baby.
Do we have a fantasy star on our hands here, George? Here is the question with Jaden Daniels of the Washington Commanders. A lot of folks went into the fantasy season saying, hey, look, maybe this isn't Anthony Richardson, but it could be the next best thing. I'm here to tell you, I don't know. I'm sort of feeling like Daniels could be better than Anthony Richardson.
I don't know if I'm going to go there yet, all right? But I think he's in the conversation, yeah. What did we hear at draft time? A lot of people wanted a quarterback who can move, right? You don't want the guy who's going to take 5-7 steps and throw the football anymore because you want that additional rushing yards. You get 50, 60 yards, that's a touchdown, right? That's why Josh Allen is so valuable. Lamar Jackson is so valuable, right? You go up and down. Jalen Hurts. You go up and down here. I think Daniels is going to be a good quarterback. I think Washington got their guy, and he can throw the football too. We know McLaurin's a really good wide receiver. It may not be much else there. We'll see what McCaffrey can be. Luke McCaffrey can be there in time. But I do have hope for him. I think at season's end he's going to be a quarterback one. It may be a low end quarterback one, but a quarterback one nonetheless.
Yeah, I was really impressed watching him in that game. All right, now Anthony Richardson, look, he's going to have a big year. He's going to have a big fantasy year. There's no question about it. I don't know about the long-term viability here. And look, give him credit. He hung in there with the Houston Texans. My fear for him, George, is that when you go back and you watch film, if you protect the deep ball against Richardson, he could hurt you with his legs. And that may be where all of his fantasy value is coming from. I cannot see him throwing 2 70-yard bombs like he did again.
That should come in time, right? Practice time. I think he will get better here. I think Richardson's going to be fine. Does need to learn how to avoid hits. All right. Once again, that hit. Remember that hit from Tua last night? He initiated it. Slide. The rules are made for you not to get hit. Take advantage of them.
All right, welcome back to Bare Knuckle Fighting main event on SportsGrid. We have a lot going on, obviously, in the next couple weeks with these fights. A lot of tension is going to be put on that fight over in Spain. But, of course, coming right after that is another fight card in Denver. A lot of big names on that one. You got the title on the line, the cruiserweight, and another guy who we've seen, fight for the BKFC a couple times, but haven't seen him in a while. Going to be coming back on that one as well, and that's Cameron Jumpman Van Camp. Going to be coming back and fighting Brandon Gertz on October 25th. Cameron, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your time. It's been a while since we've seen you. Back in April when you last got that win. What have you been up to the last couple months as you get ready for this fight?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Yeah, it has been a minute. I've been trying to get back on. It's the first thing that finally stuck, and I've just been training, getting ready.
How frustrating is that when you're going through, obviously you're training all the time. You got to, keep sharpening the skills, but when you're trying to get fights, when you're trying to get in there and, things just fall apart, whether it be, guys not taking fights or fights getting canceled, all those things, how frustrating can that be? And how do you, stay focused and stay locked in as you're going through some of these delays that you have to deal with at times during your fight career?
Yeah, no, it's super frustrating. I mean, I've accepted every fight they've given me. I don't know, dudes turn it down or why, but they just keep not manifesting. It's easy to stay ready because I got a lot of teammates, and it's just the lifestyle I live. I'm always training, I'm always working. But yeah, when this is what drives me, like in life, this is my passion. And when I'm not getting to compete, it's a lot sometimes. But I'm thankful for this one.
We're thankful that it's coming down the way too. Hopefully nothing gets in the way to ruin it, but we're looking forward to this fight. I see one of the people pushing you in your training is you bringing your kid to the gym, getting them involved, having them hitting the mitts. I know you look good in some of the videos you put up of your training, but they might have a little more power. We might have to watch out for them instead.
Yeah, no, yeah, my kid's awesome. He's a huge drive to my life. When I had him, I really focused in on fighting and, just trying to be a person he can be proud of.
And how much does that motivate you when you bring him to the gym? And, how much is that, an extra bonus for you when he can be there, training with you and doing different things? Because, of course, this lifestyle that you live, it takes a lot of time away from the family when you got to train for hours at a time, a day, or when you got to go travel to fights and, you got to be away for different parts of the week as you get ready for a fight, or, if you move fight camps to go get some extra training and different eyes elsewhere, it could take a toll on family. So how important is it and how beneficial is it for you when you can, take him to the gym with you?
Oh, it's huge, man. Like, I love when I bring him, I spar in the mornings and he comes with me. I never really pushed him to be at the gym or to even want to train or anything like that. And as he grew, he started wanting to come in. He wants to come with me. Like, I give him the option. He can stay home if he wants. He wants to come in. He likes watching me spar. He gets excited when I told him, hey, I got this fight coming up. Showed him the guy. And yeah, no, it's huge. Like, family's everything to me.
Well, it's a great motivator as well, and I'm sure it will be in this fight against Gertz. What's it going to be like for you when you finally got the call? Were you excited about it? It's another guy like you. You've had a long MMA career. He's also been in MMA for a long time and a lot of stops, a lot of fights in Bellator before coming to the BKFC. So obviously, there's a lot that you can see in his fighting style. Not necessarily all that translate to the BKFC, but there's a guy who's been around, a veteran like you. What do you see when you have watched the tape? What are you excited about with this fight, and what are you looking forward to? Do you think you could maybe take advantage of?
Yeah, man, of course I was excited. I love an opportunity to test myself. At the level him and I are at, we're not going to get an easy fight. I think the fans are in for a treat with this one. With two guys only having 2 fights in BKFC, it's usually going to be a lower level fight, but him and I are a lot higher level than most guys. I'm excited to test myself. He's short. He looks kind of powerful, but he's not going to be able to box with me. And as long as I can manage the distance and keep at my pace, I think it's going to be wrap for me.
And both of you, similar in the BKFC career so far, where you both came in, had that, loss in the first one, came back with a nice stoppage win in the second one. When you fight a guy like this, who's also a veteran, who's, seen all that you've seen and also has that power, is it different than fighting? I mean, obviously it's different, but, what is the difference in fighting a guy like this, and what, things you got to find and ways to take advantage as opposed to fighting someone who maybe doesn't have that experience or maybe hasn't been all the different situations in their combat sports career that you have?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the guys that don't have this much experience, they'll break under pressure, or maybe they don't know how, like, when it gets gritty, what they're going to be made of. But him and I are both tested in fighting, so I think it's really gonna be a great fight for the fans. They're gonna love it. It's gonna be a high level, and I just think that when you got two guys like us fighting with only 2 fights in bare knuckle, it doesn't really translate to the level that this fight is going to be at. And I think people are going to be excited for this one.
We certainly are. We can't wait to watch it. That's going to be it should be a great card as well. They've always put on some awesome fights out there in Denver. A great fight community out there. A lot of training camps. So you get a lot of great fighters on the cards as well. What do you think about when you look at this division where it is right now? Obviously, no doubt Trout is defending that title a couple weeks before you out in Spain, but it's kind of a division that's been in flux for a while because you had, the dual champion Palomino, but wasn't necessarily defending both belts always as frequently as some people liked. Now Austin Trout has his belt, the longtime boxing champion. You got the fight over in Spain. How do you think that fight's going to go? And what do you think of the division as a whole when you look at these rankings with guys like Lindsay, Franco, Tierney, Brito, and Henry making out that top 5 right now?
Yeah, I think Trout's a good. He's going to be tough to beat. He's a good boxer. That doesn't always translate into bare knuckle. Sometimes you get these brawly guys that do well. I think his style does translate, so that dude's tough. I think Tierney's. I'm not looking too deep into the weight class because I'm just trying to focus on me and what I'm going to do. And I'm not even sure if I'm going to stick at 65. I might bump up to 75. I'm tall. I'm 6'2", so yeah, I think Trout's going to win this weekend. I like Tierney. I think that dude's tough. Other than that, man, I haven't looked too deep into the weight class.
Just keeping focused, seeing what's ahead of you. And right now what's ahead of you is Brandon Gertz coming up in Denver at BKFC 67. Thanks so much for joining us, Kevin Van Camp. Can't wait to see you fight again for the BKFC.
Do we have a fantasy star on our hands here, George? Here is the question with Jaden Daniels of the Washington Commanders. A lot of folks went into the fantasy season saying, hey, look, maybe this isn't Anthony Richardson, but it could be the next best thing. I'm here to tell you, I don't know. I'm sort of feeling like Daniels could be better than Anthony Richardson.
I don't know if I'm going to go there yet, all right? But I think he's in the conversation, yeah. What did we hear at draft time? A lot of people wanted a quarterback who could move, right? You don't want the guy who's going to take 5-7 steps and throw the football anymore because you want that additional rushing yards. You get 50, 60 yards, that's a touchdown, right? That's why Josh Allen is so valuable. Lamar Jackson is so valuable, right? You go up and down. Jalen Hurts. You go up and down here. I think Daniels is going to be a good quarterback. I think Washington got their guy, and he can throw the football too. We know McLaurin's a really good wide receiver. It may not be much else there. We'll see what McCaffrey can be. Luke McCaffrey can be there in time. But I do have hope for him. I think at season's end he's going to be a quarterback 1. It may be a low end quarterback 1, but a quarterback 1 nonetheless.
Yeah, I was really impressed watching him in that game. All right, now Anthony Richardson, look, he's going to have a big year. He's going to have a big fantasy year. There's no question about it. I don't know about the long-term viability here. And look, give him credit. He hung in there with the Houston Texans. My fear for him, George, is that when you go back and you watch film, if you protect the deep ball against Richardson, he could hurt you with his legs. And that may be where all of his fantasy value is coming from. I cannot see him throwing 2 70-yard bombs like he did again.
That should come in time, right? Practice time. I think he will get better here. I think Richardson's going to be fine. Does need to learn how to avoid hits. All right. Once again, remember that hit from Tua last night? He initiated it. Slide. The rules are made for you not to get hit. Take advantage of them.
Welcome back to Bare Knuckle Fighting main event here on SportsGrid. Thank you so much to all the viewers who tuned in for another week episode here as we looked at what was going on in the BKFC. Some of these fights we have coming up. Great always catching up with the fighters and the broadcasters. Thanks so much to our man Chris Lights Out Lytle for joining us again and giving us a little bit more insight into what goes on at these tryouts that they have for the BKFC, what he's looking for, and what prospective fighters can do to try to get into the BKFC, how they can prove themselves to those making the decisions like Lights Out Lytle and getting on these Prospect Series cards and eventually some of them to the main cards of the BKFC. Also great to catch up with cruiserweight Stephen Tomahawk Townsend. An absolutely dominating performance by him in Hollywood, Florida against, of course, Jeremy Smith. Just picked him apart through that high guard and did it over 4 rounds, barely took any shots. As you can see, didn't take any damage, at least to his face. A little bit to the hands, he said, but looks like he's already healing up better than he thought, which is great to hear because the last thing you want after having a great win like that is, especially for a top-ranked guy, is to then have to sit out 6, 8, 12 months to heal depending on whatever injuries you may have, what surgeries they require. And, of course, always tough to, be throwing those surgeries out and having to pay for those things after a fight like some of these guys go through. So great to hear that he's already healing and looking to get back in there and training hard already for the BKFC. Can't wait to see what shakes out next for him in this division. It's very mixed bag, as we'll talk about in just a minute. And also great to talk again to Cameron Jumpman Van Camp, who's going to be fighting on that Denver card. Haven't seen him in a little bit. Great to see him getting back in there and trying to build on his first win in the BKFC in his last fight. And going to be a great fight between these two guys, him and Brandon Gertz, 2 longtime MMA veterans. I'm sure they have plenty of tape to study and plenty of things to try to pick apart on the other guy as they get ready to face off in Dubai as one of the main fights on that Denver card, which we'll break down a little bit more next week. Ran out of time in that first segment. We'll talk about it a little more next week because, like I said, we have a couple weeks here before we really get going again with that card out in Spain. But I want to take a quick look here before we get out of here at some of the rankings because, when you come through these cards that we've had, we have like back-to-back weeks. There's a lot of jumbling, a lot of changing. And whenever we have fighters come on, especially when they're in that mix of maybe should be ranked or just beating top opponents like Tomahawk Townsend did, you want to look and see where things stand right now. So I took my look at the rankings, saw the different things, and there's a couple that I'm a little strange on here as we sit and wait for more action from the BKFC. Number 1, let's go to cruiserweight. Now, obviously, this was a title that was held by Lorenzo Hunt, so no title holder right now as he is on that 18-month suspension for what went on with the Mick Terrell fight. When you look at it, though, number 1, Houston Alexander. Great fighter. Have had him on the show. Just, always great to talk to, a lot of insight, but hasn't fought in a year and a half, so how is he still the top guy in this division? Then you have Chris Camozzi, Sawyer DP, 2 guys that are going to be fighting for that title coming up in October. That makes sense because, when you're ranked like that, 2, 3, these guys deserve the title shot when there's no champ, so you might as well put them in there. Then you get a little bit further, into guys like Esteban Rodriguez at number 4, Jeremy Smith at 5. No one's going to doubt any of those guys' toughness. But as I said, Houston Alexander's been on an extended layoff, and Jeremy Smith just lost. Now he went from number 2 to number 5, but how is the guy like Stephen Tomahawk Townsend? You take the guy out who's number 2, you don't even make it to top 5. He's still in there. A little surprising in those as far as, the top-ranked guy and the bottom-ranked guy. But we'll see how things maybe change over the coming weeks, especially, in a couple months, Stephen Townsend has another win. Maybe he gets into that top 5. Then let's go down to the lightweight division. Another, division that we're going to see in focus coming up soon here with those Spain fights because, number 1, Tony Loco Soto fighting for that title against number 4, Franco Tenaglia. Tenaglia, as we've said before, is the UK champ. But then, no champion in this division. Luis Palomino was the champ. Never officially gave up the title. I don't know if it was just stripped of him because he wouldn't defend it. I don't know what the story is. But didn't lose this title. He lost the welterweight title. But not only is no longer the champion in this division, but then dropped to number 3. So you have to wonder what is going on behind the scenes that has the guy taken the belt taken from him and not even put as the number 1 fighter. But you get a great matchup here with Loco Soto and Tenaglia. And then Jeremy Stevens getting himself into that top 5 as well after his great performance against ODB Taylor. A lot of respect, getting that win, jumping up for his second win in the BKFC. And Howard H.D. Davis, he got another nice win at lightweight. But as we'll see now, what is his division? Because you got him there also in the featherweight top 5 after he beat James Get Down Brown, who also was fighting at lightweight. So interesting here. Kai Stewart, of course, the champ. Duran, a guy he beat. Davis, Brown, Davis he beat. Brown he hasn't yet, but Jimmy Rivera allegedly his next opponent. And then don't even get me started. We don't have even time to get to the pound for pound. That is just a mess. We'll have to save that for another time because somehow a guy who is not a champ in either of his former divisions, Lorenzo Hunt, the top guy pound for pound. Interesting. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll talk more about this and other stuff involving the BKFC next week here on Sports Grid.